The ancient temple floating in the void had been untouched for 3,000 years. Its crystalline walls pulsed with a soft blue light that warned every spacefaring species to stay away. The warnings were written in 17 different languages across the galaxy's main trade routes. Sacred ground, do not disturb. Here sleep the war gods. Trespass brings death. Captain Zektar of the Hegemony Fleet didn't believe in old warnings. Standing 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and scaled purple skin, he commanded the most feared raiding ship in 3 sectors. His crew of Vorthak pirates had never met a target they couldn't crack. Ancient temples meant ancient treasures, and Zektar needed those treasures to buy his way out of the deep debt he owed to the crime lords of Nexus Prime. "Sir, the energy readings from that structure are off the charts," reported his scanning officer, a nervous Trilaxian with large compound eyes. "Whatever's inside, there's putting out more power than a small star." Zektar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. "All the better. Ancient power sources fetch premium prices on the black market. Prepare the boarding pods." The temple was massive, easily the size of a small moon. Its architecture was unlike anything in the current galactic database. Smooth curves and impossible angles that seemed to bend space itself around them. The blue light wasn't just decoration, it was some kind of energy field that pulsed in a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. As their ship approached, automated warning systems activated. A voice spoke in perfect galactic common, somehow transmitted directly into their minds rather than through their communication systems. "Warning! This facility houses sleeping guardians of immense power. They rest after great sacrifice. Do not wake them. Do not enter. Turn back now, or face consequences beyond your understanding." Zektar's crew looked nervous, but their captain just smiled wider. "Empty threats from a dead civilization. They're probably extinct. Nobody maintains automated systems for 3,000 years without someone alive to run them." The boarding pod cut through the temple's outer wall, like it was made of soft metal instead of the exotic materials their scans suggested. 12 of Zektar's best raiders entered the breach, their weapons charged and ready. Inside, the corridors were wide enough for 3 Vorthak to walk side by side. Emergency lighting activated as they moved, illuminating walls covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. "Captain, these symbols," whispered tech specialist Vex, running a scanner over the walls. "They're not just carved. They're somehow alive. The symbols are changing, rewriting themselves as we watch." "Probably some kind of adaptive language system," Zektar replied, though he kept his voice lower than usual. "Keep moving. The energy source is deeper in." They passed through 7 chambers, each one larger than the last. In each room stood tall structures that looked like enormous coffins made of clear crystal. Inside each crystal container, they could see the outline of a figure, though the details were impossible to make out through the swirling energy fields. "Are those bodies?" asked Grunt Leader Hosk, pointing at the containers with one of his massive claws. "Probably just statues," Zektar said, but he wasn't entirely convinced. The figures seemed too lifelike, too perfectly preserved. Even if they're bodies, they've been dead for millennia. "Keep scanning for the power source." In the 7th chamber, Vex scanner went crazy. "Captain, massive energy spike detected. It's coming from the next chamber, but, sir, the readings don't make sense. It's like there's a miniature star in there, but contained somehow." The 8th chamber was different from the others. The walls were covered in what looked like viewing screens, all dark. The crystal containers here were larger, arranged in a perfect circle around a central platform. On that platform sat a cube of pure energy, about the size of Zektar's fist, floating 3 feet above its base and rotating slowly. "That's it," breathed Zektar. "That's our retirement fund right there." But Vex was staring at his scanner with growing alarm. "Captain, those aren't statues in the containers. These are life signs. Very faint, but definitely alive. And the energy signatures, sir, I've never seen readings like this. Each one of these containers is putting out enough power to run a battle cruiser." Zektar wasn't listening. He was already walking toward the central platform, his eyes fixed on the floating energy cube. Think what this could power. We could outfit a fleet with this kind of technology. We could rule entire star systems. Sir, please don't touch anything, Vex pleaded. These readings are getting stronger. It's like something is waking up. Zektar reached the platform and extended one clawed hand toward the energy cube. The moment his scaled skin made contact with the light, everything changed. The cube flared with brilliant white light that filled the chamber. Every viewing screen on the walls activated at once, displaying star charts, tactical displays, and warning messages in the same shifting language they'd seen on the walls. But, most terrifying of all, the crystal containers began to hum with increasing power. "What have you done?" screamed Vex, his scanner now emitting a high-pitched alarm. "The life signs are spiking. They're waking up." Zektar tried to pull his hand back, but the energy cube held him fast. Power flowed up his arm, and suddenly images flooded his mind. Images of a war that had raged across the galaxy 3,000 years ago. Images of a species called humans, who had fought against an invasion force that made Zektar's raiders look like children playing with toys. He saw human soldiers standing against creatures from outside the galaxy, beings of pure energy and hate that consumed entire worlds. He watched human ships, much smaller than their enemies, outmaneuvering forces that should have crushed them easily. He witnessed tactics and strategies so clever, so ruthlessly effective, that they turned certain defeat into crushing victory. And then he saw what happened next. The war was won, but the cost was terrible. The human warriors, the ones who had saved the galaxy, volunteered to go into suspended sleep. They were too dangerous to remain awake in peacetime. Their minds, trained for perfect warfare, couldn't adapt to a galaxy without enemies. So they slept, waiting for the day when the galaxy might need them again. The crystal containers were opening now, each one releasing a soft hiss of escaping atmosphere. The figures inside began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing awareness. "Captain," whispered Hosk, his voice full of terror. "Captain, we need to leave. Now." But Zektar couldn't move. The energy cube was still feeding him images, showing him what these sleeping figures were capable of. He watched recordings of individual human soldiers taking on entire armies and winning. He saw their weapons technology far beyond anything currently available in the galaxy. He watched them analyze enemy tactics in real time and develop countermeasures faster than their foes could adapt. The first figure stepped out of its container. It was smaller than any of Zektar's crew, standing maybe 6 feet tall with only 2 arms and no visible claws or natural weapons. Its skin was a pale brown color, and its hair was dark and cropped short. It wore a simple black uniform with no visible armor. But its eyes were the most frightening thing Zektar had ever seen. They were completely calm, taking in the situation with the kind of analysis that reminded him of a predator studying its prey. When spoke, its voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Status report. 7 unauthorized intruders in the sacred chamber," replied another voice. A second figure had emerged from its container, this one with lighter skin and longer hair tied back in a simple knot. Female, Zektar realized, though gender meant little when dealing with warriors of this caliber. Intruders are armed with energy weapons, Class 4 personal shields, and basic scanning equipment, continued a third voice. More figures were emerging now, 8 in total, all of them moving with the same fluid grace that suggested perfect physical conditioning. "Threat assessment?" asked the first figure, the one who seemed to be their leader. "Minimal," replied the female. "Vorthack raiders, probably after the power core. Standard pirate configuration. Estimated combat effectiveness, negligible." Zektar finally managed to tear his hand away from the energy cube, but the damage was done. The humans were fully awake now, and their calm discussion of his crew as a negligible threat was somehow more terrifying than if they had roared with anger or made dramatic threats. "We should go," he managed to say to his crew. "We should go right now." "Oh, You should have left before you entered our temple, said the human leader, his tone still conversational. Now you've triggered our security protocols. We can't let you leave with knowledge of this place. Listen, Zektar said, trying to keep his voice steady. We didn't mean any harm. We just thought this place was abandoned. We'll leave, forget we ever saw this. No one has to get hurt. The human who had been identified as female stepped forward. She was examining Zektar's weapons with the kind of professional interest that a chef might show when looking at kitchen knives. Plasma rifles, she noted. Decent rate of fire, but poor heat management. Those personal shields won't stop kinetic weapons, and the power cells on their equipment suggest they've been running at high output for several hours. They're already operating at reduced efficiency. Combat strategy? Asked another human. Unnecessary, replied the leader. Sarah, you take the 3 on the left. Marcus, handle the 2 by the entrance. I'll deal with the captain and the other 2. Understood, came the replies, calm and professional. Zektar realized he was about to witness something terrible. These humans weren't just warriors. They were perfect warriors. Everything about them, from their casual analysis of his crew's equipment to their efficient division of targets, spoke of a level of combat expertise that belonged in nightmares. Wait, he said desperately. You said you've been asleep for 3,000 years. The galaxy is at peace now. There's no war, no invasion. You don't need to fight anymore. The leader paused, his head tilting slightly. For a moment, something almost human flickered in his eyes. At peace. Yes, Zektar said quickly, sensing an opening. The Galactic Council maintains order. There's trade, diplomacy, civilization. No major wars in over 1,000 years. Then why, asked the female Sarah, are you here with weapons, stealing from our temple? Zektar opened his mouth to respond, but realized he had no good answer. They were raiders. They made their living through violence and theft. In a galaxy of peace and diplomacy, they were relics of a more brutal time, exactly the kind of threat these sleeping warriors had been designed to eliminate. Because, said the leader, there will always be those who choose violence over peace, who take what they want rather than earn it. That's why we sleep. Not because the galaxy is perfect, but because it needs guardians for when it's not. The humans began to move then, and Zektar understood why his species told stories about them in hushed whispers. They didn't run or charge. They simply walked forward with complete confidence, as if the outcome had already been decided. Hosk, the largest and strongest member of Zektar's crew, fired first. His plasma rifle discharged with a brilliant flash, sending a bolt of superheated energy directly at the human leader. The human moved just slightly to one side, the plasma bolt passing so close it should have singed his uniform, but somehow missing entirely. Then, the human was there, inside Hosk's guard, one hand reaching up to touch the Vorthack's throat with gentle precision. Hosk collapsed instantly, his massive form hitting the chamber floor with a crash that echoed off the walls. Unconscious, not dead, the human noted clinically. Pressure point technique. He'll wake up in about 6 hours with nothing worse than a headache. The rest of the battle, if it could be called that, lasted perhaps 30 seconds. Zektar's remaining crew members found themselves outmaneuvered and neutralized with the same clinical efficiency. The humans moved like dancers, avoiding weapons fire with minimal effort and disabling their attackers with precise, non-lethal techniques. When it was over, Zektar stood alone among his unconscious crew, facing 8 human warriors who had just dismantled his elite raiding party without breaking a sweat or even raising their heart rates, judging by their calm breathing. Now, said the leader, let's discuss what happens next. Captain Zektar stood frozen in the ancient chamber, surrounded by his unconscious crew and 8 human warriors who radiated deadly calm. The leader, who had introduced himself only as Commander Chun, gestured for Zektar to sit on a crystalline bench that extended from the wall. Your crew will be fine, Chun said, his tone matter of fact. We've learned to be more precise with our methods over the centuries. In the old days, we might have simply killed intruders. Experience has taught us that unconsciousness is usually sufficient. The old days? Zektar asked, his voice barely a whisper. The war years, replied Sarah, the female warrior. She was checking each of his crew members, ensuring their vital signs were stable. When we fought the Devourers, back then, we couldn't afford to show mercy to anyone who threatened civilian populations. Zektar's mind reeled. The images he had seen when touching the energy cube were still fresh in his memory. The humans fighting against creatures of living darkness, entities that consumed entire worlds not for resources, but for the simple pleasure of destruction. Those creatures, he said, the Devourers, they really existed? Oh yes, said Marcus, a human with pale skin and light brown hair who was examining Zektar's plasma rifle with professional interest. They came from outside our galaxy, through a dimensional rift that opened in what you now call the neutral zone. Took us 2 years just to understand what they were, let alone figure out how to fight them. Commander Chun activated one of the wall displays, showing a star map that Zektar recognized as the current galaxy. The war lasted 15 years, he explained. By the end, 17 civilizations had been completely consumed, including the original inhabitants of 12 systems that are now major trade hubs. But you won, Zektar said. We survived, corrected Chun. There's a difference. Winning implies we accomplished our objectives with acceptable losses. The truth is we barely managed to drive them back and seal the rift. The cost. He paused, his expression growing distant. The cost was everything we were before the war began. Sarah sat down across from Zektar, her movements fluid and controlled. Tell us about this peaceful galaxy you mentioned. What has happened in the 3,000 years since we entered our sleep? Zektar looked around at the 8 faces watching him. Despite their calm demeanor, he could sense the intensity of their attention. These were beings who had spent 15 years learning to read battlefield situations in microseconds, and now they were analyzing him with the same lethal precision. The Galactic Council formed about 2,500 years ago, he began. After your war ended, the surviving species realized they needed better cooperation to